When people imagine change, they often think in terms of massive leaps forward, sudden breakthroughs, or dramatic reinventions. They picture the athlete who goes from obscurity to champion, the entrepreneur who builds an empire overnight, or the student who turns from failure into brilliance in a single, decisive act. But in reality, life rarely works that way. Most of the transformations that shape us are gradual, built brick by brick through a series of seemingly insignificant victories. These are what we call small wins, and though they often go unnoticed, they carry an unseen power that can alter the course of an entire life. The psychology of small wins is fascinating. Each time you achieve something, even something that appears minor, it provides proof to yourself that change is possible. Think about it. If you set out to improve your health and you lose just 1 pound, that may seem like nothing compared to the long road ahead. But that 1 pound is evidence that your actions matter, that you are not entirely powerless against the chaos of your habits. That little spark of proof changes your perception, and perception changes everything. The difference between people who give up and people who keep going often lies in whether they recognize and respect these small victories. Momentum is born in those moments. It's easier to keep going once you've started, even if the start feels embarrassingly small. The philosopher Lao Tzu said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." But it's more than just the step. It's the fact that once the step is taken, you are no longer at zero. Zero is paralyzing. It is the weight of absolute inertia. The first step, the first win, breaks that spell, and suddenly what felt overwhelming begins to look possible. There's a profound neurological reality behind this. Our brains are wired to reward progress. Even tiny achievements release dopamine, the chemical of motivation and reward. This is why crossing off a task on a to-do list feels satisfying. It's not just psychological, it's biological. That chemical signal tells your brain, keep going. This works. It reinforces behavior in the same way training an animal does. You reward it for small actions until those actions accumulate into complex behaviors. In the same way, when you reward yourself for small wins, you're conditioning yourself for long-term success. But there's something deeper here. Small wins do more than build momentum. They shift your identity. Each win is like a vote cast for the kind of person you are becoming. If you go for a short run, even if it's just 10 minutes, you voted for the identity of, I am someone who takes care of my body. If you read a few pages of a book instead of scrolling aimlessly, you voted for, I am someone who values learning. These tiny victories slowly reconfigure your self-concept. And once your self-concept changes, your behavior follows with less resistance, because now it aligns with who you believe yourself to be. The opposite is also true. Ignore small wins, and you'll reinforce the belief that change is hopeless. If you dismiss every little improvement as meaningless, you rob yourself of momentum. You train your mind to see only the distance to the finish line, and that distance will always feel unbearable. No one can sustain motivation staring only at how far they have to go. But anyone can sustain motivation by acknowledging how far they've come. That's why recognizing small wins is not indulgence, it's strategy. It's the only way to keep moving forward when the goal still feels distant. And let's not forget how these small wins accumulate. Compounded over time, they create exponential change. A single dollar saved seems trivial, but consistent saving creates wealth. One act of kindness seems inconsequential, but repeated kindness transforms relationships and communities. 10 minutes of study a day feels almost laughable, but string those minutes together over months, and you have mastery. This is the unseen power of small wins. They disguise themselves as insignificant, but in reality, they are the building blocks of transformation. What's even more striking is how small wins act as correctives to despair. Life can be overwhelming, The problems we face, personal struggles, social conflicts, global crises, often appear so massive that one individual feels helpless in the face of them. But here's the truth. The way you resist despair is not by solving everything at once, but by solving something small. Clean your room, have a difficult conversation, exercise for 15 minutes. In those actions, you reclaim a sense of agency. You remind yourself that while you cannot control everything, you can control something. That shift from helplessness to agency is what sustains hope. So when you look at your life and see the mountain ahead, don't fall into the trap of thinking you must scale it in one impossible leap. Mountains are climbed step by step, transformations are built win by win, and each small victory is not trivial, it's a turning point. It's the proof that you are not static, that you are capable of change, that the story of your life can be rewritten. The unseen power of small wins is this: they break the spell of inertia, they build momentum, they reshape identity, and they make the impossible attainable. Don't underestimate them, don't dismiss them, because in the end, success doesn't arrive in one grand moment. It is forged quietly, invisibly, through the accumulation of small victories, each one leading you closer to the life you were meant to live. And the truth you must remember is simple: small wins are never small. They are the seeds of greatness. So, if small wins build momentum toward transformation, their deeper significance lies in how they shape who we are becoming. Every choice, every action, every little victory is not just about progress on an external goal. It's about crafting an internal identity. An identity, once it solidifies, becomes the compass that guides everything else in life. Think about this carefully. When you push yourself to wake up on time, when you resist the pull of distraction and instead complete the work you promised yourself you'd do, you're doing more than finishing a task. You're saying to yourself, I am the kind of person who keeps commitments. And that statement, repeated again and again through countless small wins, is far more powerful than the external outcome. Because here's the truth, the world responds to who you believe you are. If you believe you are disciplined, your actions will naturally align with discipline. If you believe you are capable of growth, you will find ways to grow. If, on the other hand, you believe you are unreliable or incapable, you will unconsciously prove yourself right. This is why small wins matter so much. They are evidence. They provide proof to your own mind that you are capable of becoming more than you currently are. And the more evidence you accumulate, the stronger your identity becomes. Over time, the small wins compound, not only in external results, but in the construction of an internal self-image that makes larger victories almost inevitable. There is a psychological principle at play here called cognitive dissonance. Human beings don't like inconsistency between their actions and their beliefs. If your actions reflect discipline, if you exercise, study, keep your promises, your mind adjusts your self-image to match. I must be a disciplined person, otherwise why would I behave this way? That shift in identity reduces resistance in future actions. The opposite is also true. If your actions reflect laziness, dishonesty, or avoidance, your mind concludes, I must be that kind of person. And soon enough, your identity makes it harder to act differently. This is why every small win is critical. It pulls your identity towards strength rather than weakness. An identity, once reshaped, alters the trajectory of your life. When you begin to see yourself as capable, responsible, and resilient, challenges stop being sources of despair and start becoming opportunities to prove that identity true. Suddenly, goals that once seemed impossible no longer feel foreign. They feel like natural extensions of who you already are. The person who has built discipline through countless small acts doesn't approach a big challenge with fear. They approach it with quiet confidence because they've already proven themselves in 1,000 small battles. But notice this as well, discipline is not born in moments of grand inspiration. It's forged in the tiny, unglamorous choices that most people overlook. It's forged when you decide to make the bed, when you choose to finish the page instead of closing the book, when you resist the urge to lie because the truth feels inconvenient. These moments don't make headlines, but they make character, and character is destiny. A person who masters small wins becomes a person who can be trusted with responsibility, with leadership, with the weight of greater challenges. Without those wins, without that identity, all the external ambition in the world collapses under pressure. You can see this clearly in the way people handle failure. If your identity is fragile, one failure is enough to shatter you. But if your identity is grounded in countless small wins, failure doesn't undo you. It becomes another opportunity. You don't collapse because you've built the habit of rising again and again through small victories. That's what small wins really are. Practice runs for resilience. They condition you for the setbacks that inevitably come with pursuing anything meaningful. Now, some people dismiss this line of thought. They say, who cares if I achieve small things? What does it matter if I read a few pages, save a little money, exercise for 10 minutes? But that skepticism reveals a misunderstanding of how identity is built. It doesn't matter how small the action seems, it matters that you did it. Every act is a vote cast in the election of who you are becoming, and those votes add up. If you keep voting for discipline, integrity, and courage, you eventually become the kind of person who embodies them without effort. And if you keep voting for avoidance, weakness, and distraction, you eventually become the kind of person who can't break free of them. Okay? This is why the unseen power of small wins is not only about external achievement, it's about the architecture of the self. Each win builds a structure within you, brick by brick, until you are no longer the same person. And once you become someone new, someone stronger, wiser, more disciplined, the larger victories you once thought were out of reach become almost inevitable. They are not miracles, they are simply the visible harvest of an invisible identity cultivated through years of small wins. So if you feel weak, start small. If you feel lost, start small. If you feel overwhelmed, start small. Because each small victory, however unimpressive it looks from the outside, is proof that you can change. And change, repeated and sustained, becomes transformation. The truth is simple but profound. Small wins do not just change your life, they change you. And once you are changed, the life you thought was impossible begins to take shape around you. So remember this, every choice you make is shaping your identity. Every small win is carving you into the person you are becoming. The only question is, are you becoming someone capable of carrying the weight of the future you desire? Because in the end, identity is destiny, and small wins are the hands that shape it.